Hi there. I thought I'd make a wrap-up video so I can talk about why I like the game in a bit of detail and also a little bit about videos and my thoughts on projects going forward. But first of all, the game. I love this game and I hope that comes across in the videos. I mean, I think it's great even though I've only played this one scenario, right? I mean, this is the scenario against the Spanish and there's the one against the Mexicans and then there's one against the US. And then you can put all three of them together for a campaign game, which just sounds great. And I look forward to doing that. So even based on 1/3 of the entire experience, I'm very excited about this. And this game has it's turned me on to more than just liking the game itself, but and more than just the designer Joel Toppin, because I'm very interested in what he's up to next, and I P500 his next game, Comancheria, because I think he's a designer to watch. But also it's turned me on to heavy gaming in general. I'm a heavy gamer as a general rule. If you're familiar with me at all on BGG, Enzo622, you know that I prefer heavy games, and I'm really fascinated and excited about continuing to explore this genre of playing heavy solitaire games, because it's new to me. I've played solitaire games before, but or maybe I've played games solitaire, but I don't think I've ever explicitly played games that were made for one person, that have an AI that really engages you, and that's a good segue into why I really do like this game so much. When I was looking at possibly getting it, I couldn't figure out what it was or where the fun was, and yet I was reading all these comments like, oh, this is a great game, this is a great game, it's immersive, it's thematic, it's engaging, and yet I look at the board and I see these pretty little stones, and I'm like, well, what is this? It doesn't look like a war game, right? And yet it doesn't really look like a Euro. It's coming from GMT. It's got a bunch of chits. What is it? And I think that's part of its appeal, is that really it is its own thing. It's hard to describe what it is. It's maybe it's a Wuro, something like that. But where I find a lot of the fun, the real visceral pull for me, is with that enemy instruction display. I think it's a brilliant way to take a complex set of possible reactions by an AI and making them into a rather simple and elegant system on the board. I can't help but think of the coin system, which I tried and I thought was okay, but it didn't grab me viscerally the way this one does. And let me just say on that note, that's a soft comment. I might revisit the coin series and find that I really do like it. It's still sort of TBD in my head, but I would just say at first, right now, it didn't grab me the way this does. I was like, okay, that's kind of cool coin. Like, I love the card playing system in coin, but something about the, I don't know, something about the charts there, the flow, the way the actions work there for the different groups, just didn't grab me the way this does. And I think it's because of the simplicity here. When you have that enemy instruction display, which shows you these are the actions that the enemy is going to do, possibly, but they could change because you roll the dice and they could flip or they could switch. It gives me a chance as a player to think, okay, so it looks like he's going to build or he's going to raid. This is what's happening. Maybe I can get some trade goods and cancel something flipping if I roll the die and it's going to flip. So that enemy instruction display is brilliant because each one of those chits represents a whole bunch of sub-processes, right? That you would have to take if it happens, but you're just seeing the tip of that. You're just seeing the top of that process, and you get what that means to you and what you might need to do. And then on your end, the actions are terrific. I mean, you've got what's it called? Taking actions or something? Taking actions, planning, and passage of time. And if the game were just the taking actions, just moving your families and raiding and doing, what are there, like 9 things that you can possibly do, 9 actions if you take the taking actions option versus planning or passage of time. If that's all it was, that could be relatively interesting. But you have these 3 primary these three major options for actions that you can do on a turn, and the fun is then trying to orchestrate, all three of them in a way that obviously is, to your advantage without getting too interrupted by the deck. So what I'm trying to say is the actions on your end are very interesting in choosing which of those three main options you're going to take in light of what the enemy instruction display is showing you, and then the event deck. AI decks are tough to do. They're tough to pull off because a game can end up feeling like you're playing out the shuffle. I mean, I like Pandemic. I like it enough for what it is, but we've had games where we felt that it didn't really matter what we would do. We were just playing out the shuffle, and you don't want that. You don't want the deck to dictate too much of the Solitaire experience. You want to feel like your decisions matter, and I absolutely feel that way. At the same time, there is enough variability, enough unknown in the deck to make the tension, right? So do I want to keep planning and building up that passage of time, or do I need to do that passage of time now so I can get my counters on the board so that I can then move them out of the Canyon de Chelly into areas where there are VPs? I love it. I love it. And the event deck, I also love this too, right? Just because there's a card on top of that deck and you're going to flip it over doesn't mean you're going to get to do anything, because it could be a ceremony card. It could be a scoring round card. You don't know. You can't count on it. And even if you do the math and you say, we've got like three possible cards before the scoring card has to come out, well, those could be ceremony cards. You're not guaranteed that one of them is going to be an operations card. So I love that. So I get a real visceral pull here for the enemy artificial intelligence, and enough control on my end to make me feel like my decisions really do matter. And I know that because I've made mistakes where I've tried to build up too long and didn't move my families quick enough, or step on his outpost fast enough, or get families out of the Canyon de Chelly and into territories that count for VPs. To know that I was getting greedy, and I needed to play a little bit smarter in that way. So I'm getting that with the that visceral feel of, oh boy, this is what's coming. This is what's coming. If so I better act accordingly. So I love it for those reasons. I hope that's clear. So. Now let's talk about learning the game, however. I do feel like I want to say something on this subject because that's a different story. It's a lot, to get into this system and this AI that has all this richness that I just gushed about. To me, there's a price, and that price is learning the rules. And, fortunately, you have the playbook, right? So you don't just jump into the game by reading the rules. They say this is not a game where you're going to, learn and memorize the rules and then start playing. There's way too much. So fortunately, you have programmed instruction playbook where you actually jump in and start playing an instructional scenario. So you play a little, read a little, play a little, read a little, back and forth, and then you can go back in and fill in later. Because there are several dozen, I don't mean to scare anyone away when I say this, but there are several dozen sub-processes. So if I take this action, then I do these like 8 things, versus if I take that action, then I do these 6 things. And the enemy, if he does these things, these 10 things are going to happen. But if that happens, those 8 things are going to happen. And if you watch the videos all the way through, you saw me flipping, especially to subvert, like, what does subvert do again? And some of the actions are contingent, colonize, if no cubes in the raided box, if no outposts on the map, otherwise, da-da-da-da. And that's fine. I mean, it works brilliantly. That's what gives him, and actually I should say that's what also gives the enemy AI such wonderful teeth, is that a colonize isn't always a colonize. It could be this, it could be that. And those contingencies are built into the instructions brilliantly. But, learning these is a lot. Okay, so I gave myself several evenings, bite-sized chunks to read and learn and go through it. And you know, one of my pet peeves is if you're going to make a heavy game, that's great, but please, you know, don't do a lot of proofreading and don't have a lot of errors. But unfortunately, you know, we had this errata sheet that came out, and I have to chuckle at people on BGG because I read some comments and people were like, well, I didn't even need the errata sheet. Yeah, most of them were obvious anyway. I'm like, really? Really? You didn't need the errata sheet? Because that's not how I work. I'm way too methodical about things. And when I was learning this game, I got the game in front of me. I've got the playbook here on my lap, and I got the rule book here, and then I've got the errata sheet, and I'm doing all this. And when I would encounter something, I would check it off. Okay, we did that. And then I would update in pen the appropriate book, you know, to make sure that I had it covered. It was a lot. I remember feeling very overwhelmed at first. I really did. I was like, what did I get myself into? Like, I quit ASL back in the 80s because I was tired of this. But I'm really glad I stuck with it because it's really worth it. So that's the message I'm saying is I don't want to scare anyone away with all of these charts and everything that are here, but because it's worth it, you know. I found one thing that helped me a lot. I'll tell you, whenever I take notes, it burns into my brain better. So I made myself a little reminder sheet. I know some of these exist in different forms, but for me, it was helpful for me to make my own, especially on what trade goods do, on the peace and defend instructions. So I have those. I also printed Linus's enemy instruction flow chart, which is also very helpful. So you have all these different ways of making it work, and you will, and it's worth it. So be prepared to put some time in, but look, if you're a heavy gamer, right, you know this is part of the price for having for enjoying a really rich, complex game. Okay, so thoughts on the game, thoughts on learning the game. Just wanted to cover videos because this this play was a learning experience for me in more ways than one. I learned a lot about the game, a lot about making videos, a lot about producing videos. I got a new camera in the middle of the process. You know, it was a lot. I really appreciate everyone's kindness in giving me feedback. I probably should have played the game a little bit more before I started the video series, so I was more on point with the rules. And I'll do that on my next heavy game, make sure I've got a few more plays under my belt. And I learned a lot about producing the videos and how to do that a little more efficiently and everything. But my point is, I'm not sure how much of an audience there is for heavy game videos, playthroughs. Like I wasn't sure if people were going to watch a playthrough of a game that takes several hours. I mean, I've watched Kalismar's 13-part playthrough of Shadows of Brimstone, but that's not really a heavy game, you know. It's kind of, but I enjoyed every part of it, and it was long. So if people are interested in watching playthroughs of heavy games, you know, I do have D-Day at Tarawa up next, which, by the way, is another one of those. I'm looking at the game, I'm reading about it, and I'm not getting necessarily where the fun is because you're just hitting a beach. Like, where's the fun? And yet people are saying, oh my God, you know, it's a great game and the decisions would really matter. So I'm hoping to have the same arc that I had here of where's the fun? Oh, wow, there it is with that one. So if people are interested in seeing a playthrough on that, I can do that. So any comments, feedback on, are people more interested in seeing reviews of games or how to play of games or playthroughs, or is it one of those, well, it really depends on the game kind of a thing? I'm just sort of doing what's fun. This was fun to play. It was fun to video. It's a whole other different avenue into the hobby. So I'm happy to do it, even if it's only 3 people watching, but definitely open to feedback as to what other people might be interested in. Okay. Thanks for listening. It was kind of interesting to get on this side of the camera for the first time. And cheers and happy gaming. I'll see you on the next one.